What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Cinema Royale. Very special Snyder Cut centric episode.
Snyder edition.
Yeah, I was gonna say like I couldn't think of anything clever, obviously, so I just went with a dumb look at the camera.
Probably should have asked him to come in here because he probably would have come. He seems to do everybody else.
Yeah. But before we get anywhere else, you guys know us. We're the Punch Drunk Critics. I'm John, and that's Travis. Wait, that's Travis. Okay, yeah. Mirror effect. And then we have joining us today Matt Razak, a long time friend of the show. Jesus, he's probably been coming on some form of our podcasts for 10 years at this point. Razak, thanks for joining us, man. Come on and talk about the Snyder Cut.
Of course, yeah, definitely. I'm excited to dive into all 4 hours of it.
We're going to break down each minute, so we're going to be here a little while. I hope you're ready. I hope you packed a lunch for a while talking about this thing. The Snyder Cut, man. This movie's been a long time coming.
Yeah.
I was thinking about it the other day, and I was like, so when Whedon's movie came out, and it was almost instantly hated, and I was trying to think, did we even get through that year before people were already begging to see what Snyder had done?
I don't think we got through that week before they started saying something. You know, like as soon as they hated it, it was like, well, what does Snyder do? Because it was a quick and easy thing to look at.
Yeah,
you know,
it was pretty insane how quickly people were asking for Snyder, and I'm pretty certain that Snyder had something to do with that because over the years between the movies, Snyder wouldn't let any of this go. It seemed like every week he would go on, what is that stupid social media thing that he likes, Arrow or Vero or something, whatever that thing that he's like the only person who uses it. And he would drop something that he wanted to put in Justice League that wasn't there. It's like every week it was something new, and it was like this got his fans like salivating to see what his version of the movie was, and it was. It was. I'm sure Warner Brothers was like, "Please go away." During this,
they paid the $100 million just to shut him up, essentially.
Right.
But the thing is, when Joss Whedon, before Joss Whedon's version came out, and while Snyder was still on, and Razak, you probably remember this as well as I do. Even before Snyder had left, you were hearing the inklings that Warner Brothers was trying to punch up the movie to make it more like the Avengers. And before Whedon was hired as director, we had started hearing about him coming in just to do some like rewrites and edge stuff like that. And then I remember thinking at the time is they're trying to get him out. I think they're trying to find a way to get him out. And unfortunately, the timing of his daughter's death, I think, gave them the cover to kind of do that. And Snyder has pretty much confirmed this in recent weeks that it wasn't just, I'm leaving because of my daughter's death. I'm leaving partially because they kind of wanted me to go.
Yeah.
Well, is that how you remember it?
Yeah, and I mean, I think it was a Variety article or THR that came out where he was basically like, they had like two people on set watching him to make sure it was what they wanted, and they were, he was just having a giant uphill battle, and I think the studio and Snyder, the death of his daughter was what triggered a way out, right? It opened that door that a lot more easily, and it was probably it was obviously the right decision. I think Snyder needed. Now the studio's forcing out of, trying to make a Marvel movie out of their DC universe was obviously not Snyder's decision. And obviously, I think after Batman v Superman, they lost faith in Snyder and
totally.
His vision. Yeah. And that was very obvious from before the movie released and before Whedon came on. Like you said, it was very clear. And to be fair to the studio, Batman v Superman sucked. Like
we all lost faith in him too, though, and that's what people seem to be forgetting right now. Everybody's Snyder this, Snyder that. Snyder's awesome, but I still remember like it was yesterday. Everyone's like, "Oh yes, Joss Whedon's coming in, the savior of everything." and how the times have turned. Now he's the
Right.
devil, and Snyder's everybody's favorite. But it wasn't long ago that everybody hated Snyder. But they always said throughout this, everything that you're seeing will pay off with justice. He's got a long-term plan. He's got something, and that's not the way you make movies. You don't make movies so you can see the whole thing and appreciate it in retrospect. You make them so they're enjoyable there. But they were even saying that then, like, you got to see the whole thing, and then once they started bringing Whedon in and all that, it was like, you'll never see the whole thing. It's not going to make sense. The Justice League sucked because you didn't see what it was, and now we finally get to know if that was true.
Yeah,
There's definitely a lot of revisionist history.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Always.
I think it's true. I mean, I look, I liked Man of Steel, and I actually think Batman vs Superman is okay, but it's not great. It's not great. But the problem is, from Warner Brothers' perspective, is Batman vs Superman made what, like $800 million, something around that number. It didn't break $1 billion, which, let's be honest, Batman vs Superman should break like $2 million, $2 billion. Okay,
there's nothing that can be bigger than that.
Right, it doesn't get much bigger than that unless you do Justice League versus the Avengers.
Yeah, there you go.
JLA versus the Avengers, then that should break like $5 billion.
On Coruscant in the Star Wars universe, and then you're done.
but it underperformed, and so I'll totally see where they were coming from, where they were like, well, why should we put faith in this movie to do better than those would have? Now there were some, they probably should have expected better from Justice League, considering it was the assemblage of all these amazing heroes together. But there was such ill will towards Snyder after the first two movies that I don't care if he had given us this version of the movie back then, I don't know if it would have performed better.
This is lightning in a bottle. This is a series of things happening perfectly to give us what we have now. This is
somebody setting the expectations in the basement, and taking us to the third floor, and everybody's like, woo!
Yeah, good job, you made it.
Look, to be fair, I think this movie's markedly better than Joss Whedon's version. Okay, I'm just saying that if this version had come out in 2017, I don't know if we'd be seeing the reactions we'd be seeing right now.
And it wouldn't be this version. He wouldn't get 4 hours.
That's
he wouldn't,
the thing.
The studio would have meddled a bit. We would have got Zack Snyder's theatrical release Justice League, not Zack Snyder's HBO Max 4-hour everything I ever wanted and more in here.
Right. Because he wanted to do, he had an initial plan for 2 or 3 movies.
Right.
Based on this, and who knows if he ever would have gotten to see that.
This seems like it could have been the first 2, maybe, and then a third of what was promised at the end of this, basically. But and I think that really hits on. I mean, this isn't just a movie at this point. This is going to be a precedent-setting thing, and there's going to be ripples coming from this, especially the success and the appreciation it's getting. And I just hope. The one thing everybody's like, oh, 4 hours, 4 hours. Every time I hear that, I'm like, when's the last time you binge watched something? We are all prepared to watch 4 hours of anything now. It wasn't that way 10 years ago, but now it is. And if you look at any piece of media that somebody really cares about, you look at Revenge of the Sith and how rushed that was, and how all of a sudden Vader's a bad guy. Or if you look at all the stuff that's missing from the Harry Potter movies, if people are given the time to flesh out the characters, you can get something really special. And without getting the reviews, I know we'll get into this in a minute, but I mean, I think that's the biggest takeaway from this is you have Whedon's Justice League, which is a studio blockbuster action movie, and then you have Zack Snyder's movie, which is an epic superhero movie that's got the things that are missing, like the feeling, the heart, the compassion, the actual superheroics of it all that were not in Whedon's. Was just they took every piece of that out and said, here's superheroes beating each other up. Have a good day. Yeah,
I think Whedon's version. It was impossible for Whedon to do much with Justice League because he didn't. It wasn't his movie. He didn't care about it. He didn't have a feeling for the characters. He didn't have a feeling for wherever it was that Snyder was leading these characters to go. In fact, so he cut. I speculated about it in my review, and I was like, I wonder if some of the animosity he and Ray Fisher had towards each other played into him cutting out so much of Cyborg. Like, I really don't know. We don't know, but it sure as hell seemed like it because he seems like such an integral piece when you see the whole thing together. and then you look at Joss Whedon's version, you're like, he's barely there, kind of, you know.
It's almost like cutting Batman out. You know,
Yeah.
he's.
Well, if I was Ray Fisher and I watched the Whedon cut, I would be, because he had Cyborg is the central piece of Snyder's cut. Like, he's the heart. He has the big emotional climax at the end in the mother box. Like, he is the main character, right? The Batman and Superman stuff is more off to the side. Cyborg is it. And if I was Ray Fisher and I thought I was going to be the main character of a movie that was clearly going to try to launch a Cyborg franchise, like, I would be pissed off.
This guy just stole everything from you, right?
Yeah,
you know,
right?
And you're left with a little bit more than booyah is what you're left with at the end. I mean, he's of all the heroes in this, Cyborg is the hero's journey that we're following. He's the one who's reluctant at first. He doesn't want to take on the mantle.
Most of the other characters have already gone through their journey.
Yeah, this is his origin story essentially.
Yeah, no, absolutely, that's true.
Yeah.
When this thing was kind of being built up by fans and things like that. I mean, I'll never forget going to Comic-Con that year where they had the actual like people out there with like Snyder Cut signs and they were everywhere that year. And I was still thinking, I don't know what you guys are out here doing. You're wasting your time.
I'm still surprised we're here today, honestly.
Right.
I've already seen it.
That's kind of how I feel about it. I'm kind of still shocked thinking about all those months and really a couple of years of people screaming for the Snyder Cut. And like I said, people going to Comic-Con and taking up space and buying up space to promote it, this thing that was never going to happen. Razak, how were you feeling about it during this time? Did you think it had a chance of ever coming together?
No chance at all. And like, I should say, I enjoyed the Whedon cut. Like, on rewatches less so, but initially coming out of the theater, I liked it as a big, fun.
Yeah,
it had fist pumping moments for sure. Yeah,
I remember in my review, I gave it a 3 out of 5. I said it's fine, but it's nothing major.
That's exactly So I do want to say that because we people tear apart the Whedon cut, but it was fun. And it can be torn apart as well. But yeah, I did not think there was any way this Snyder cut. I didn't think it existed, right?
Yeah.
Who lets Zack Snyder walk away with all the footage on a right? That's some super sneaky stuff.
Yeah.
Like you don't just take a laptop with a studio's property out of a studio and then be like, oh, by the way, I've got everything. Right?
These studios treat this stuff like national security secrets, like taking something from the CIA. It's not much different.
So the chances of that even happening are mind-boggling. And then just the snowball of things that needed to happen in order for this to come to fruition. Think like not just that, but streaming has to become a thing. Every studio has to launch their own streaming service, and then the streaming service needs to be like, what's a really good way to get people, and all that stuff has to come together. Zack Snyder and Warner Brothers have to be on talking terms still.
Does this movie happen?
That's a bigger issue than people are letting on. I'm glad you brought that up because that's no small feat. If you remember, like Travis was saying earlier, they basically kicked him out.
Yeah.
Does this movie happen without the pandemic and without the growth of streaming? Does this movie happen?
Not without streaming.
Yeah, not without streaming for sure. And then does streaming become the thing it is this quickly without the pandemic? Yeah, I mean, maybe that's a great point. Is there a Zack Snyder's Justice League without a global pandemic?
Right. I don't think there is because streaming wouldn't be nearly as important as it's been because of the pandemic over the last year. And the need for constant content, I think, is such a big part of why the Snyder Cut exists. Because I mean, I don't see them giving him the money to do this and putting it out in the theater. I don't think they would have done it. I don't think they would have risked it.
No, it definitely wouldn't have been in theater if not for HBO Max. This thing doesn't happen. But the biggest thing that the pandemic did for Snyder is letting them put it in one movie. I mean, it can't be understood how much we've been, for better or worse, how much the global population has become accustomed to watching long periods of content. I mean, 4 hours. I mean, that's there's like one movie out there. I think, what is it? Once Upon a Time in America is close to 4 hours, or some Sergio Leone movie close.
Well, I mean, the Irishman was 8 hours, right?
No, 17, with the special features.
Or
Yeah.
it just felt like it was.
But I mean, you don't. It gave them the option to say, well, we could do it in 4 episodes or 6 episodes. That lets the studio go a little bit further. And the things that came together to make this happen are crazy. I mean, and there's no small piece of any one that would have made the whole thing fall apart. But here we are, and thank God it was really good.
Here we are, and it has been, I'll say, the most. Well, honestly, for me, it's been the second most talked about movie this week, because I don't know, all the Sam Heughan and Ruby Rose fans have been up my ass about SAS Red Notice, for Christ's sake. It's been ridiculous, the amount of email and messages I've gotten about that stupid movie.
Don't mess with the Rose.
It's more Sam Heughan, man. It's like the Sam Heughan fan clubs out there are. But among my friends, Justice League is probably the biggest thing talked about this week, and probably for the last month or so. People were super excited for it. Initially, they were going to do it as a 4-part miniseries. I think when you watch the movie, and we can start talking about the movie a little bit more now, but talking about the movie, it's broken up into, I think, about 6 chapters.
6, yep, and an epilogue.
Yeah, and watching it, I actually kind of think it might have been better broken up into 6 chapters. I mean, not that it's bad as a 4-hour cut. I mean, as soon as I got my screener, and it was like at damn near midnight or maybe 11 o'clock at night, I watched it in full straight through. Didn't get bored, didn't get sleepy. I was fine. So it was fine that way. But I think it might have worked better as it broke it up into episodes. It had a lot of natural breaks there. I thought a lot of peaks and valleys that would have been perfect for a TV series. So I think it might have worked out better that way. But let's talk a little bit about what we felt about the movie itself. Razak, you're our guest. What did you think watching the Snyder Cut in comparison to Whedon's? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I definitely came. I mean, I had been mocking it pretty hard. If you go back and look at my writing on it, I had been pretty blasé about the entire thing. And so in turning it on and starting to watch it and getting about, just being stunned that the depressing opening of the Whedon cut was not actually part of that was so Snyder and it wasn't him. Right? But so I was sitting there going, wait a minute. So I fully expected it to be a train wreck, and I'm sitting there going, am I enjoying this?
Shit!
I
gotta eat some pie.
Right? What's going on? I must, maybe I'm sick. Like something that ended about 2 hours in. I was like, okay, yeah, this is working. It's coming together. It needs an editor, and it's bloated, and it's Zack Snyder. That's what I was like. This is Zack Snyder in a film, and it's enjoyable. Like, I am totally surprised. So like I did a complete 180 watching it, and then relative to the Whedon film, it is better because it has those character moments that the Whedon movie just doesn't. And like I said, I don't think the theatrical Zack Snyder cut would have been the same thing. I think it would have tripped into a lot of the issues the Whedon cut does, because it wouldn't have the time. But because it's got the time, because it's got 4 hours, it really delivers a lot more. And it's enjoyable. It has its flaws, it's got its problems, but it's fun to watch. Yeah, I was totally surprised by the end.
My feelings on Snyder are that he is, like a lot of us, I think he's similar to Kevin Smith in that he's like an ultimate fanboy. And Kevin Smith has never had that chance to like fully indulge in something with no leash. And I feel like if Kevin Smith did have that opportunity, he'd probably do something that was excessive the way Zack Snyder does. Zack Snyder is such a fanboy that and as we've always known, he has ideas for everything that seems cool. The difference is he always puts it in, like whether it just needs to be there or not, he puts it in. Like, and whether it works or not, it's in there. So the thing about the Snyder Cut is this is like Snyder, like pure, like 100% pure Snyder. So like everything is to the max. So it's like, okay, so can we squeeze in a Green Lantern here? Okay, well there's Green Lantern. Did it add anything to the story? Not really. Okay, but it's cool. Let's
we
add
for Granny Goodness. No,
right,
yeah?
exactly.
Okay, let's put her in.
Is there can we put Martian Manhunter in here? Does he really add anything to the story? No. Okay, but he's cool. Okay, so it's in there. And this is kind of how Snyder is. And it's just like all this stuff that is just cool. Like if it's cool, then he puts it in. And the problem with doing that sometimes is that some of this stuff is totally out of context to people. Like if you're a casual fan and you're coming into Zack Snyder's Justice League, you might not understand who the fuck is this Martian Manhunter guy who just shape-shifted out of nowhere. Like, who the hell is this person?
And why is he talking about
like to us, we get it. Like we get why it's cool that Martian Manhunter showed up. But your average person is probably like, I don't know what the hell that was about, but okay, whatever.
Right.
But Snyder can only see from a fanboy's perspective. And to some degree that's fine. Like for us, it's fine. For people, probably 90% of people who are going to see this movie, that's okay. But for the rest, all this stuff, a lot of this stuff is just totally free of context.
Yeah.
But I'd say from the very beginning, I really liked it. His portrayal, his depiction of Superman's return was better. The relationship between Lois Lane and Martha Kent was better. I loved the way, not just Cyborg's story, but the Flash was so much better in this movie than he was in Whedon's. And what's interesting is, I think I laughed as much at this one as I did at the supposedly funnier Joss Whedon one. Because
Joss Whedon was funnier to Joss Whedon, like falling on top of Wonder Woman, which we can all now look at and be a little bit more cringe about.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, God, doesn't it seem worse now?
So much.
But like Ezra Miller's scenes are so much better here. Like the one where he saves Iris West that we finally got to see, so much better.
They made him a hero. I don't mean to interrupt you. I just don't want to forget that one part.
Right.
It blew my mind. This was a very powerful character moment for Batman. I thought it was a good team moment in the original one. But when they first go in to save Silas Stone and Flash is kind of scared, like I don't know what to do. I've never fought before. Just save one person. I thought that was a great moment, but I didn't realize until I saw this one how it kind of took Flash down a peg and made him not a hero. Where in this one he's the one pushing them forward. They say, let's get in there, let's do this. Basically, let's do it together. So that was that. I mean, little stuff like that made him such a better.
Flash
character.
gets his own little journey too. Like he has a really big moment at the end of the movie, and it felt like a real accomplishment, like something not just because he was saving the day for the world, basically, but for him personally, it felt like a moment. And he didn't get that at all in Whedon's version. I mean, he just came across like a dork who was just kind of hanging around, like hanging on. And that was the wrong way to portray him. And I think that this is what I mean when I say that Whedon has no feeling for the characters, because he didn't have any part to play in creating them for this movie. He had no interest in it. So he cut out the parts of them that made their stories special. And that was unfortunate, but it was good to see all that stuff back in, because it helped this movie such a tremendous amount. And I even like Steppenwolf in this movie. Steppenwolf ends up being an actually decent villain. Arguably the best villain the ECU has had, because they haven't had a low bar. Granted, it's a low bar. They haven't had very many villains other than maybe Michael Shannon Zod has been pretty good, but they haven't had very many good villains. Steppenwolf comes across as a pretty decent bad guy here, looking for redemption. I dug it. I'm surprised by how much I liked it, but I really did. And yes, I see the problems too, like everybody else. Like I said, it's excessive, and it has a very narrow perspective of that of a fanboy. But man, I really enjoyed it. John.
I mean, I agree with everything you said. It for me, it comes down to the character moments, right? It comes down to what separates them and makes them a hero. The moment, Zack Snyder gets, I don't want to say gets a bad rap, because nobody says he's not good at these emotional moments, but I think they're overlooked quite a bit. Like in Man of Steel, when Clark first learns to fly and he's hearing Jor-El and his son, they will fly within the sun or whatever he says. I mean, that's the writing, the execution is so good on that. It's reused in this actually to almost the same emotional context. And
I love that moment where he's hearing both Jor-El and
Jonathan, both sides. Yeah, that's somebody that understands Superman and would drive Superman. What creates his moral center. And then you have every person gets a nice even Aquaman. Every person gets their hero moment. Wonder Woman has a little girl that says, "Can I be like you one day?" Cyborg helps as soon as he learns his powers, he goes and helps this woman who doesn't have any money, is getting kicked out of her house, by making her the bank's national lottery winner and giving her $100,000. And Aquaman saving people from the sea. He gets all those moments in, and as to somebody like, I don't want to say like Whedon, because he knows about the stuff too. Everything else aside, he's a good filmmaker, but he missed it on the Whedon cut. He took all of that stuff out that made them three-dimensional and made them two-dimensional. Especially even with Steppenwolf. Like you mentioned, that's a character who was, I'm the big bad henchman. I'm Jaws. I'm Oddjob to Darkseid. And they take him and, the upgraded effects, somewhat upgraded effects, helped a lot. But making him this kind of sympathetic...
I was going to ask you what you thought of the effects, because you're especially harsh on the DC movies.
I don't know who they hire, man. Like it's a company that works solely in Play-Doh. They make Play-Doh and then they just do this. I don't understand why. I don't understand how I can watch Marvel and I don't know where the Iron Man suit stops and where Robert Downey Jr. begins. But I watch this and it's always like somewhat cartoony. You look at Thanos and you look at Darkseid. I mean, I don't understand that you're on the same level of Hollywood. How do you not have the same quality? And this was better, but it wasn't good. They cleaned up a lot of the visuals, specifically inside the Kryptonian ship. I mean, if you guys remember in the Whedon cut, it was really dark and like misty and all that, and they cleaned it up to make it look better all around. I loved pretty much every second of it. The only part that I thought felt tacked on was the nightmare sequence at the end. But even that, once I got a minute and a half into it, I was like, I'm good with it being tacked on. This is pretty cool.
What do you think about that nightmare sequence, Razak? Because that was something that was one of the two brand new scenes that Snyder added in. It's a nightmare sequence, kind of like the vision that Batman had that we saw before. This one features Jared Leto's Joker, and basically it's teasing a sequel that we're never going to get.
What was that comic storyline that it's teasing? Basically, I couldn't remember. Injustice 2. The video game did it as well, but it's essentially Joker kills Lois Lane or something, and Superman goes nuts, and Superman goes evil against everybody.
Yeah. I don't know the name of the story. I'm not as big of a DC.
Well, there is one. So we don't know what it is. There is one. That's where it comes from.
No. Yeah, I think you're right. But if Julian were here, Julian would know what it was. But I don't know.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
If it was a Marvel storyline, I'd probably know it. But a DC story.
I mean, and it was tacked on. Like that's how it felt. And I'm not going to begrudge him if Warner Brothers wants to give him money, and I don't like Jared Leto at all. I'll begrudge him Jared Leto. But,
that was going to be my question for you, Matt.
Right. I know. I do not.
Wasn't any better?
In almost anything. But he was that Joker. Even in that, it was better than the Suicide Squad, at least. I mean, I don't. Yeah. I wouldn't really connect those two characters, anyways.
Yeah.
Like,
no, I didn't think for a second that this Joker was that Joker. They don't feel like they're the same guy.
Yeah, it's very right. It was tacked on, but it was cool it was fun to see.
Yeah.
You're already 3 hours and 50 minutes into it. I'm not going to
10.
That about another 10 minutes. Right? I think it was probably the most, edgelord Zack Snyder-y segment of the film. That's actually one of the things I was surprised by was, I don't think there was much color correction or anything, but this version, that you talk about the darkness of the Snyder films, but this version actually felt lighter and brighter to me than the Whedon cut, except for that last Batman cursing and everything. It was less the picture and more the tone. It felt lighter. It didn't feel like heavy like Batman v Superman or even Man of Steel. It felt like hopeful and teamwork, and like all those aspects came out of it, made the movie, even if it isn't visually brighter for me. So yeah, I think that last 10 minutes was the most Snyder part of the film. Though you mentioned that moment with the Flash, right? Which I think encapsulates everything right and wrong about Snyder, right? There was a great character building moment. It made Flash a stronger hero, and it clearly understood him. But also, he was speaking his emotions out loud to himself in slow motion. Right? Like it was the perfect combination of like Snyder. So yeah. I seeing that 10 minutes, and having watched the Snyder Cut now, I'd like to see that sequel, right? I'd like to see that apocalyptic Batman Flash fighting Superman. I think that's the better Batman v Superman movie. So if Daniel's birthday again, I'd be upset.
We've seen, like, they've released basically what his plans for the next couple of movies were, and honestly, they seem pretty goddamn awesome. But then again, you know, if you look at the storyboards for anything Zack Snyder does, they seem pretty freaking awesome. Right. It's all about how much he can cram in there.
Are we really done with this universe, though? I mean, assuming now, unfortunately, being HBO Max, they're not going to see box office dollars, but the just insane popularity and appreciation. Is it not possible?
I think there will be an eventual IMAX release of this at some point, which is one of the reasons why I think they made the decision to put it together as a full movie rather than keep it separated, is because they intend to release it in IMAX or something once theaters fully reopen. I think that's what they'll probably end up doing.
Well, that's something we should mention to anybody in case they don't know the technical reason for it. When you watch it, you'll notice that there's bars on the side, like there used to be bars on the top and bottom back in the 2000s. And that's because the whole thing is presented in IMAX aspect ratio, I think. I hope I'm right. I see Razak's nodding his head, so I'm going to assume I'm right. I took a swing there. Thought I could have been wrong. But, you know, but do we think, is there, obviously we know Batfleck is gone. We won't even get into Cyborg's issues with Warner Brothers right now. But is there any way we get another film in this universe?
Razak, I'll let you answer that first.
I don't think we get a full-fledged film. You know what I could see them doing, because a lot of franchises are doing this, is animated spin-offs, right? Zack Snyder, Justice League 2 animated. And Ray Fisher has spoken well of Snyder, and he loves the Snyder Cut.
Snyder might be the only one who hires him from now on.
But if there is like voicing an animated character there, so I could see like Snyder being allowed to finish HBO Max streaming in an animated.
That was my initial idea for the Snyder Cut, was that they would put it out as animated movies, the way they put out animated movies every goddamn week, it seems. I thought that was what they were going to do. I don't know if they'll do an animated movie for this. I feel like probably a comic book is probably what it'll be. A lot of those things have already been storyboarded and drawn by Jim Lee anyway. Jim Lee had publishing a DC Comics. I mean, I could probably see the Zack Snyder's Justice League 2 and 3 as a comic book miniseries. Is probably where I would see it going, and that saves them the problem of. Do we have Ray Fisher come back and voice this character when we don't want anything to do with him? It saves them from that kind of discussion too. So that's probably if anything, that's probably what we'll see. In terms of a movie, Snyder has said there's no chance of it. I don't necessarily see it happening, and I'm actually sort of disappointed by that. Honestly, I feel bad that Joss Whedon's version stays as canon in the DCEU, because I think it hurts it overall. Whereas this movie would have helped it tremendously. Would everything fit perfectly in terms of like continuity? No. But then again, continuity doesn't fit perfectly in Marvel either, whether people want to admit that or not.
Or in comic books as a medium. I mean, people always talk about continuity, but those people haven't read comic books.
I'm a continuity nerd when it comes to comics, and I hated Marvel for a long time when he went on this retconning like just binge for a while back in the
It's the whole
early.
reason we have a multiverse.
I hated it,
Yeah.
but in terms of but I also I've grown up and I come to accept that that's just some shit that you do. But I just don't think I see it happening. I don't think I see it happening, and that's disappointing to me because I think Snyder's version really helps the DCU seem stronger.
Yeah, everybody I've talked to says that this has changed their mind on DC as a as a film group. I know you guys didn't want to. We wanted to keep it below an hour, so I gotta ask. Moving forward, what are the effects? We opened up talking about how unbelievable it is that we're here. Now that it's so successful, one of the main things about film, especially whenever you hear somebody say the book is better than the movie, that's because you have all the time in the world and all the pages in the world in the book to give all the details. Now they're showing us with the Snyder Cut that those details are things people want to see, and that there is a market for them. What are the implications going for? I don't see us getting a whole bunch of I don't see the Suicide Squad director's cut coming. I don't see any of that, but I do see a change in how studios interfere with some of these filmmakers. What do you guys think?
Can we admit that Snyder has basically created this market for this sort of thing?
The cut market? Yeah.
He basically has, because
he's
now
Dick Donner for the new generation.
Every single fan wants to see the full version of whatever the filmmakers original vision was, whether that vision is any good or not. Like, we gotta there's gonna have to become a balance, because a lot of these things were cut for damn good reason.
Yes. Yeah.
Everything doesn't need to be in there. It doesn't need to be in there.
Someone needed to edit this movie, right? And we're applauding like the extra time with the characters and stuff, but it needed editing. Like, it needed someone coming in and being like, Zack, I love you, bud, but no, and no.
Right.
Like,
and he's not the only. And look, he's not the only filmmaker that needs that sort of thing.
No.
Editor. Tarantino is best with an editor. Paul Thomas Anderson, my favorite director ever, needs an editor. So all these guys need an editor. Zack Snyder needs an editor too. But it's one of the reasons why I thought this movie would have been better as a series, because it's basically the first 2 hours are table setting. Mm-hmm. Like, it's literally 2 hours of them assembling the team. That's a lot, and that's a lot of excessive stuff that's in there too. And that's the kind of thing where I'm like, if that had been broken up into chapters, that would have helped it move along a little bit better.
And you could have had a bonus episode that was all the Dark Side round 1 against the old heroes back in the day. That sequence was just so much better in this movie than it was in the original. Seeing Ares, the bad guy from Wonder Woman, just straight up Thor, Dark Side, right?
How was that? How was that? I mean, the fight scenes early on with the Amazons and stuff like that was just looked amazing this time. I don't know, it just looked great.
They did. They looked way more fleshed out.
This fight with Superman when he first awakens. Mm-hmm. I don't remember it as much in the Joss Whedon movie, but it really hit me in this one, and probably because it was so much else around it that helped it seem important.
Yeah.
But when he came back and he had that fight, I was feeling it, man. I was like, God, this fight is really fucking awesome right here. Like, I just want to see them fight Superman. And the thing is, that scene is teasing what we're probably supposed to get in that next movie, when they're going to be facing a Superman. And you're like, man, I don't think they could beat him.
It was so intense.
I don't think they could beat him if they had to really fight him for a whole movie.
I mean, he just wipes the floor with everybody in a second. And then that was shot so well. Obviously, Superman's not going to kill Batman. But they were pushing so far with Superman's assault on Batman there that I was literally tensed. Like, he's not going to kill Batman, right? They didn't change that much, did they? That was an amazingly well shot fight scene.
That was a really good fight.
Even in that moment, it helped define the character relation, right? Snyder does it really well, actually, and his action, which is kind of ironic because at other times all he does is like write emotions out loud. But in action, he helps define characters, right? And there, you saw Batman be like, he's going to kill me. Like, I made a horrible mistake. Like, right?
Yeah.
And it built that relationship far better than anything Whedon did in his version, where Batman felt a lot more, I don't know, confident and self-assured. He was having his doubts about being a superhero, but it never really translated over. But in that moment, Snyder kind of like hits that home where it's like,
That just
This
rocks
guy-
something clear for me.
That
You
man's
are
just a guy in a suit, and this man is a god. Like,
what am I doing? Yeah.
right.
No, you are so absolutely right. And because I couldn't put a finger on what they did different with Steppenwolf that made him so much more of a compelling villain in this. And it's exactly what you're talking about. It's in the action. It's in the change of effects in his face. Like the little shots in the action when he's talking to Darkseid, he looks like a little kid wanting his daddy's approval. Little stuff like that, man. You're absolutely right. Snyder does that particularly well.
But also, slow motion Wonder Woman beheading and his head flying through the portal.
Yeah.
I was just like, yes.
But the one thing we didn't. Can we all agree? Zack Snyder, the editor that he hires eventually, needs to sit him down and talk to him that orchestral choir music and slow mo is great when used sparingly.
Yeah, right.
There's no reason for the Norwegians to sing in a chorus when Aquaman leaves the shore. Okay, so just too much of that. More of everything else.
Yes.
Yeah, no, totally agree there. So we're all pretty much agreed on Zack Snyder's Justice League. I think we all kind of wish we could see this universe that he's created continue.
Mhm.
It's kind of sad to see that DC has moved on without him, somewhat. But I think even so, there's still echoes of it all throughout the DCU, no matter what.
Right.
So I'm happy about that at least. And whether he's completely done with Warner Brothers, who knows? I think if he ever did come back, it would probably be on something. If he did another superhero movie for Warner Brothers, it wouldn't be Justice League. It might be some new character, maybe something like that. But I don't know.
I'm happy on Army of the Dead. How he does there, and I mean we're in a very exciting / scary / uncertain time for DC because you've got 3 or 4 universes going at the same time now. And uncertainty with characters, and nobody really knows how they're going to handle that. Is it just going to be a disconnected universe? Is there going to be something that connects them in Flashpoint? It's a really exciting time to be a part of the DC universe.
Flashpoint, which looks to be the movie that totally erases the Snyder Cut, like the Snyderverse.
Or you could think of it like that, or you can also think of it like the movie that establishes the Snyderverse as part of the DC multiverse, right? So now you can officially say, hey, the Snyderverse is over here. It's not touching this universe. We're probably not going to look at it again, but it's technically
they're
canon,
safe.
right?
It's okay.
You can go through a warp and you can get to Apocalyptic Batman if you really want to, right? It's there.
And really, it's only this version of Justice League that is aside. Like his first 2 movies count.
Yes, right.
Justice League, unfortunately, counts. It counts.
Yeah.
So Snyder's influence is there no matter what. It's just this extended version, this much richer version that we're not going to see more of, which is, like I said, a shame. But,
and I would say, you mentioned Snyder's influence. Like, since this did so well, maybe, John, you were asking about, like, what's the long-term ramifications here. Snyder still, clearly still has a relationship with Warner Brothers, and he's still listed as a executive producer, right, on all these DC films. So, like, they might bring him back in. You don't let him write, you don't let him direct, but this could lead to more Snyder stewardship of the DC.
A Kevin Feige adjacent role. Yeah.
Right. Yep. And Ray Fisher better hope so, because it's the only way he's going to
That guy. We need another hour to talk about him. I understand NDAs and all and legal proceedings, but dude, just come out and say what happened and make everything okay. We know you're the victim. Just tell us why to believe you.
Honestly, I think we know enough at this point.
But
I don't think we need to know anymore. I think we have a pretty good idea of what's gone down with the whole Fisher and Whedon thing.
Right.
And I don't think we need to know anymore. I just wish everybody would shut up about it and move on.
And what that means is next episode of Cinema Royale, 2-hour special about Ray Fisher and Joss
unless
Whedon.
we can get Ray Fisher on the show, and then he can talk about all he wants.
Yeah, there you go. Oh, man.
Razak, this has been awesome, man. It's been great having you on here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Make sure to tell everybody where they can find you and your stuff.
Tell me where they can find your stuff.
Check it out at flixus.com, and I'm also writing over at escapistmagazine.com.
Awesome.
All right, sounds good, man.
Alrighty.
Thanks, Zack. Thanks, John, of course.
Yep, and we are the Punch Drunk Critics. Check our site out every single day, www.punchdrunkcritics.com. On Twitter, our handle is at PDC Movies. Travis is at Punchy Critic, and I am at Punch Drunk John. On Twitch, Travis is at cinematic_enforcer. Guys, we're looking for writers right now, so come aboard our team. You can see movies early. You can talk to famous people. You can even sit right here on this show with us, and that's, I mean, what more can
Unless we
you
can
ask
get Razak. Unless we can get Razak. We can get
for?
Razak.
Yeah, unless we get Razak. As long as if Razak's sick, you're on.
Yeah.
info@punchdrunkcritics.com is the email address. Shoot us an email. Let us know why you want to be a writer with us. We're looking for people right now, folks. Until next week, we're the Punch Drunk Critics, and we are out of here.
Later.